9:08 on Tuesday the 22nd of November 2022, and we've reached the ultimate round for 2022. Yeah, so ultimate round. I didn't say penultimate. Anyway, ultimate round. So we've got an agenda here. Yeah, we do. There we go. It's the open agenda, not the hidden one. It's all outlined on page 3. We've got a few items to deal with. We have item 5.1, 6.2, 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 7.1, as well as the usual. We've got conflict of interest declarations, confirmation minutes, and so on and so forth. Councillors, was there an appetite to unstar any of the starred items? Councillors, was there an appetite to star any of the unstarred items? No? Well, we'll leave the agenda as is. I have received no notice of there being any apologies, so we can skip past that. No leaves of absence, that's fine. Would someone like to move the starred items? That's moved by Councillor Tozer, seconded by Councillor Caldwell.
He used to welcome the visitors.
Councillors, I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. So that deals with 1, 2, 3. There were no conflict of interest declarations that I'm aware of, so that's 4 dealt with. 5.1 is dealt with. 6.1, 6.2. Councillors, we have item 6.3 to deal with. Director, is there a presentation available here? We've got a presenter and a supporting officer listed.
Through the chair, we have Richard Pascoe, the manager of the relevant branch, to deal with this, to talk to it. It's a fairly straightforward report with a clear recommendation. It's something which, at your request, pardon me, we've investigated. We've found that there hasn't been sufficient evidence to support consideration of a particular type of offering for RV vehicles at this stage. So, Richard, would you like to elaborate a little bit further on the report?
Sorry, Richard, would you mind bringing your microphone down and turning on, just in case there are Grey Nomads live streaming?
Yeah, so we did have original concepts as part of the 2018 Tourist Park Strategy to look at a hinterland experience that had intended to be probably, a campground, potentially sites associated with caravanning and camping, servicing probably more of a western side of the highway, looking at opportunities to come into the natural area state as a different offering from the 7 traditional tourist park sites, but are predominantly coastal orientated. Over time, that did start to look at whether or not there was a particular sort of usage for recreational vehicles, which are quite specialised, I suppose, in terms of what they're looking for an offering, which is pretty much low cost or no cost, and supporting, I suppose, drive-through sort of visitors to the city. We've obviously looked at a couple of opportunities that have come forward through either a petition or otherwise, and as the report outlines, it is difficult to obviously get the appropriate environment that balances, I suppose, adjoining uses, particularly if they're in sport and recreational reserves. The compliance of and the environment for the actual guests themselves, and ensuring that those sites don't become activities for behaviours that are difficult to manage and also difficult to continue to uphold in accordance with the intended use. So the report outlines that while we've looked at various things in that space, there are obviously other priorities, including continuing to look at maximising the return of tourist parks post-COVID 2019 and continuing to build on the investment in the existing mainland parks. Not to say that if the private sector came forward and wished to explore that, we would work with the appropriate park authorities and stakeholders to assist in that process.
Richard. Councillors, I'll throw to Councillor Tozer. Well, we'll begin with some questions. So, Councillor Tozer, did anyone else want to get in on this RV action? Just Councillor Tozer for the moment, and then I've got one on dump points. Councillor Tozer.
Yep. So the report, addresses, primarily a potential RV park in the hinterland, and the sites mentioned are Firth Park and Motorbike Showgrounds, but I'm assuming there'd been some other sites that potentially were looked at, and I'm kind of neither here nor there on that, and I'm appreciative of the work that went into the project. But my question actually is, there's a mention of a petition in here, and that this report was loosely, connected to that petition in some form. Has there already been a letter sent to the petitioners about this matter? Or,
Yes.
And we have said that this report is pending? Well, what do we say to the petitioners?
So through you, Mr Chair, the original report that you referred to was back in May 2019.
Yep.
In accordance with the resolutions associated with that petition report, we wrote to the stakeholders to inform the decision of council. So that occurred a number of years ago.
And so the decision of council was to explore this report, or the decision of council was not to explore?
Through you, Mr Chair, the decision at the time was basically to inform the petitioners. The report or the resolution that has resulted in this report actually came through last year's report on the tourist park investment plans, which was around June 2021. So that was an additional resolution that was added to that item, requesting that the officers do some further work on that and to bring a report back sometime this year. So
we had a change recommendation. So there was like a vanilla update on tourist parks, and then it was the will of the committee to tack on this extra bit of homework for city officers to do.
Got it. Yeah, so the substance of my question was just that would it be appropriate for us to write to petitioners and say we've now subsequently, investigated the matter and this is the outcome of this report and this was the council's resolution, whatever it ends up being, and then, make a comment saying that, it's council's view that if the opportunity for RV park remains for the private sector.
How about we do this, Councillor Tozer? If we could have a look at the recommendation. Let's add a 2 that reads that that the original petitioners be contacted and be provided with a copy of this report, reaffirming council's position.
That's enough.
Yeah,
Full stop.
full stop. And then let's add a 3, which will go to my dump points, but I'm happy to talk to it. That the Tourist Parks Business Unit, is that an appropriate way of talking about it? That the Tourist Parks Business Unit contemplate a small marketing or communications plan to highlight the publicly accessible dump points. Dump points, yep. To highlight let's kill just publicly accessible dump points, and I'll talk to that very briefly. I'll answer my own question. So, Councillor Vorster, through you, what's that 3 about? So, councillors, you might recall, I have cracked.
It's gone crazy.
I have cracked.
It is your version of what council would look like.
Oh, rough.
You may recall, it was either last round or the round before, we had a look at that tourist parks investment program piece. It generated a little bit of media coverage, and it was very interesting reading the comments on the Gold Coast Bulletin article where people bemoaned the fact that there were no dump points that were available to people in RVs. That's actually quite incorrect. Many of our tourist parks provide access to these dump points for I think about $15 per use. Yeah. So we provide this service, but it appears as though the market doesn't understand that we provide the service. Maybe one way of encouraging RVs to come to the Gold Coast is to make it much more clear that these services are available. Now, this part 3 doesn't direct the business to execute a marketing plan around this, but it just draws the businesses' attention to the fact that there is perhaps an information gap there in the market, and they should contemplate a small marketing or communications plan to better highlight this as a potential facility or attractor for RVs into the city.
It's a great idea.
Thanks, Councillor Forster. Yeah, no worries. Anyway, Councillor Caldwell.
Do we know what the level of use of that service has been?
For you, Mr Chair, we are able to generate reports on it. I've got some high-level information. Some of the smaller parks basically have no history of the dump point being used in the last 2 years. There is intermittent and periodic use of the larger parks at Tallebudgera and Broadwater, but reasonably small numbers of sole coming into park to use a dump point. A lot of the recreational vehicle users will actually take the opportunity to actually have an overnight stay and make the most of that overnight stay, use the dump point for free.
But it's just interesting because so many people bemoan the fact that these are not publicly listed on the catalogues that exist online, yet we've got the services. So the underutilisation probably talks to the fact people don't know that it's there rather than, there being low latent demand. Councillor Hamill?
No, just agreeing with you, Mr Chair.
Councillor Pauline Young, then Councillor Owen Jones.
And I would support what you were saying there, Councillor Forster, because I can remember at the last election when you and I were working together at Broadbeach Albert Waterways there, we actually spotted 2 or 3 RVs that were actually just using the public toilets there and dumping into those, so, because they didn't, and in conversation with them, they didn't realise that there was specific places that they could go to, so they were just turning up at public toilets and doing the same. It's happened in Burleigh as well, the Esplanade, so maybe a little bit more awareness would be good.
Yeah. Councillor Owen Jones and Councillor Caldwell.
Is the need also driven largely by where they've arrived from? So, if they've, and the city of Gold Coast is clearly metropolitan, but I would have thought that the majority of RVs visiting the Gold Coast have probably left from a point where that may have already discharged as well.
Yeah, could very well be. I don't profess to be an expert at this at all. I just look at an underutilised asset and maybe some awareness can drive demand. But it could be, as you say, Councillor Owen Jones, there's no demand. But if we don't highlight it, the opportunity, well, we'll never know, in my view. Councillor Caldwell.
I sense there's really not a lot of enthusiasm from Richard about this whole topic, but
You haven't got that far.
yeah. But if I remember correctly, this was really contemplating, say, the Mudgeeraba Showgrounds as just a light touch on an ability for a little bit of an income stream and a slightly different offering. And I just wanted to put my 2 cents worth in that. I remember seeing this maybe at Beaudesert Way or something, the Beaudesert Showgrounds or something does it quite well. And I don't know what you're talking about in terms of this antisocial behaviour type of stuff, because I thought from what I had observed there, it seemed to be very well managed. Everyone stuck to their sites. There was good facilities available, but it maintained very much the sort of showgrounds kind of environment without any dramas. So I'm probably a little bit disappointed that the report is a bit superficial in the way that it deals with that kind of investigation. So
I might go for a response from Councillor Toes on the Mudgeeraba Showgrounds, and then Richard, it's up to you if you want to add something there, but no stress.
The Mudgeeraba Show Society some years ago expressed a strong interest in facilitating visits from recreational vehicles in a more formal sense. There is already a process in place for permits to be issued for camping on site at the Mudgeeraba Showgrounds for special events that are held. Best example and most recent example I can give you is Smokefest, big national barbecue cooking competition that came back a little while ago. They had quite a number of RVs and camping on site as people were competing over a period of a weekend for this barbecue competition. They slow cooked beef and pork and such things. It was very delicious. So that opportunity for the showgrounds already exists to generate revenue from camping for special events, and it's not proposed that would cease or be terminated. They've got a permit to be able to do that from time to time, and they can lodge an application to add to that when the need arises. My view is that the Show Society has really paused any further exploration of recreational vehicles visiting outside event seasons or event periods, and part of that has got to do with their management on site of drainage issues and electrical issues and some of the flooding issues that they've faced. They just, in the last month, received a $100,000 grant from the Community Benefit Fund to resurface all their asphalt roads, and the Mudgeeraba Punting Hat Club got a $96,000 grant to facilitate some fencing and some reconfiguration of their leased area, which are great donations, but I don't think that any sort of RV outside event activity could occur until those projects have come to life. And to be fair, that's probably a 3 to 9 month process anyway. So it makes sense for us to push this at least 12 months down the track at the showgrounds. And Richard's been very open with me, and I think, to be frank, he is fairly protective without wanting to be, obviously he's serving the city, but he's a bit protective of the tourist parks business, and so should we be. There are other higher priorities in the tourist park strategy that are going to deliver better outcome for ratepayers from a revenue and profit point of view than this particular project. And I think the Mudgeeraba Showgrounds is not yet ready to advance anything for at least 12 months anyway. And by council resolution, we can revisit it at that point.
Mate, I'm more interested in how you can resurface a car park for $100,000.
I don't know either, but
Sounds awesome.
yeah.
So good. Councillor. You want to move it? I'm happy to, if you want to second it, Councillor Caldwell. So move Councillor Tozer, seconded by Councillor Caldwell. Councillors, any speakers against? I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Councillors, before we move on, just wanted to mention, you may have recalled some time ago that the Robina Lions Club presented to this committee about their Big Red Kidney Bus project, which was ultimately funded by Lions clubs from across the city. The Lions clubs tell me that they have now, I think, put together the $400,000 and will be delivering the Big Red Kidney Bus next year, which is pretty good. It'll be Gold Coast based, and I was just speaking with the director. The bus will be looking for a place to park during, its travels, and the Lions have contacted me inquiring whether it may be possible to bring the Big Red Kidney Bus to some of our tourist parks, maybe the quietest ones, as a way of inducing, I suppose, visitation to the city, where people living with kidney issues can travel to the Gold Coast and actually have a holiday at one of our tourist parks, knowing that they have renal dialysis available on site, something that's used extensively in Victoria and the central coast of New South Wales. I don't propose a GB or anything, but the director has undertaken to have a look at whether that may be appropriate or not. Just flagging our Premier, a flag next year is the Year of Accessible Tourism. And maybe accessible tourism is not just about those living with disability, but maybe those dealing with chronic health issues as well. Maybe it's a good marketing opportunity for us, but I'll leave it to the director. Just wanted to give you that update. Yeah, thanks, Councillor
Sorry, I know
Lacastro.
it's not an agenda item as such, but just a question. When you said it's going to be based here on the Gold Coast, so before the earlier conversation was that it'd be a few weeks here and then it'd be a few weeks maybe somewhere else. So is it going to be here the entire time, or is it going to shift?
I think it's going to be here basically the entire time, because it'll actually be run and managed by our local health board.
Brilliant.
Which is great.
Brilliant.
A great outcome, I think.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Councillor Owen-Jones?
Are you imagining that the tourist parks may also be a location that it can be safely stored while it's here?
Yeah, I think that's the idea. That it could be that it's on rotation between our tourist parks, or that it's for a particular season on rotation, or maybe there's a low demand tourist park where there's not going to be conflict with retail demand, where it might be for the whole of that season. I don't know, but I've got no preconceived ideas.
And do you know if it has a safe location to be stored otherwise?
No, I don't know. I have received a letter which I haven't yet read from the Lions, and because I'm not across the detail, I didn't propose putting up a GB which might lock us into something that's inappropriate or operationally difficult. But what I can do is circulate that letter that I've received, which I've not yet read, to all of us, so we're across the project as well.
So, Mr Chair, I've previously spoken to the Director about, I think there are probably several charities that are also over time looking for secure areas to store things, and I'd suggested to Elton it would be an interesting conversation for maybe his directorate to have with Gold Coast Water and Waste at the Helensvale Waste Recycle Centre. There's an area which is fenced off and secured but not being used because it's part of a buffer area, and that may be an opportunity for groups like this, for the city to work with them to provide a little bit of something for not a lot of output from the city. But it would need us to be all working as one city for that to work.
If only we had a cap to cement it. Anyway, so I'm sure you'll take that on notice, Director. Thank you. Councillors, we now have item 7.1, and just before we get to that, I just want to flag that I have my mum has a very close friend who also attended my wedding but not as a member of any bridal party, in 2011, I think I got married. But they've been a family friend for like 27 years, and she's a Tai Chi instructor and part of the Active and Healthy program. I don't believe that interest reaches any threshold of a DCI or PCI, so I don't intend making a declaration. Not that I know of. Oh, no, she does. University of the Third Age. All right, anyway, just thought I'd flag that. It is a closed session item though, councillors. We don't have to go into closed unless we do stray into commercial matters or budgetary matters. Councillors, do you have any questions that did relate to budget? Do you have one on budget?
I actually do, and it's the only question I have, but I reckon I can ask it without getting into the detail.
If anyone could, I'm sure it's you, so please.
So on page 40 of the confidential pages, it shows over 4 columns, it shows the growth in the program and also the cost of running the program, and the fact that a good portion of the funding actually comes from the divisional contributions. And the way I see it is, clearly it's a successful program if you want to judge it in the context of the number of activities and the people engaged. I'm just curious as to whether or not, as part of a budget submission, we could actually look at moving some of that cost from the divisional budgets into actually a whole of city program. I think that it clearly has been successful, and that would then maybe stabilise the program moving forward.
So, Director, sorry, just to bring everyone up to speed, when the Director and I spoke about the program, one of the issues that I think we both wanted to see addressed was the accuracy of the attendance figures that are listed on that table. Because my feeling is, having attended some of these sessions, I know, can you believe it, but I know Councillor Belton Lumsden certainly makes use of them, that sometimes attendance information is not collected at the time of the activity, so we might have approximations that are put up by some operators. So when the Director and I spoke about this, he undertook to have operators or suppliers to the program begin collecting more information at every session. Director, has that happened yet? And if not, do you think there's an opportunity to maybe get some postcode information from people at the time?
Through you, Chair. Yes, we've looked at a target date of 1 January to start getting better data for all of the people who are using these programs. There are some issues that we're working through around privacy, etc., and the fact that there isn't any particular good electronic platform which we'd really like to manage these programs more effectively. But if we go the old method of name and address, which would include postcode, that will give us a much better database than what we've been able to be presented to you today. And you'll see the very limited demographic data that we have in one of the first tables in this report. So the answer is yes, and we hope to do that from the beginning of next year.
So, Councillor Jones, the reason why I flagged that is I think if we collect that data and it shows that, say, an active and healthy activation in Division 11 is being attended by people from postcodes far beyond the divisional boundaries, then it makes a very strong case for there to be a whole of city contribution towards a program. Do you think that's a valid premise, or we should just push ahead?
I'd just be interested in seeing it funded as a whole of city program. So if you look at the split, you know, it's probably 60-40, but having asked the officers earlier, the contributions from the divisions are not dissimilar, you know. So we kind of fund officers, and then to me it would make sense to have a balanced program across the city.
Yep.
And if we can encourage, you know, 250,000 people or whatever it is to participate, I think that's actually a really positive thing.
What's your feeling around, say it was whole of city funded and we've got the ability of amending this recommendation to refer it to next special budget, around councillors topping up that funding to support a particular activation? Like, for example, a whole of city approach might not want to deliver yoga, you notice I didn't say Tai Chi, yoga on the lake stage at Varsity Lakes, but city officers might say, well, to make that happen might require an extra $2,000 a year divisionally over and above the whole of city funding. Would you be prepared to accommodate that top up, or do you think it should be?
I don't have a problem with that, but I actually don't see it as, if you remember a couple of years ago, we had that crazy conversation about where the divisional funds were being used to fund the maintenance and repair of playground equipment.
Yes.
You know, so I actually think that it's a program that's built over the last 15 years into something that's clearly worthwhile and successful and engages with a lot of the Gold Coast. I don't have a problem with the top up. I just think that it's a program that's probably matured enough to allow it to be whole of city funded rather than rely on topping up or not of divisional budgets.
Per division, or should we leave that to closed session?
Well, just the highest and the lowest.
Okay, so the highest amount, and I won't name the division, is 44,000. It's not.
To be fair, this is in our already open
Papers from the last financial year, so
okay.
it's not.
I'm happy
it's
to
not
read
public.
about. Okay.
It's not private.
Here we go. So for the mayor, and I'm just going to round it to the nearest thousand. So for the mayor, it's 23,000. Division 1, 42. Division 2, 17. Division 3, 15. Division 4, 24. Division 5, 44. Division 6, 25. Division 7, 40. Division 8, 40. Division 9, 18. Division 10, 23. Division 11, 20. Division 12, 40. Division 13, 35. Division 14, 15. Yeah.
But to mine, like, I mean, it's actually, I think it's a programming issue in terms of there are, like, so we've got Broadwater Parklands and Hodder, and we've got a whole lot of areas where it actually makes sense to program and for people to come to them, or like the Pimpama Centre is quite a big catchment that picks up across divisions. So I just wonder whether or not we'd get a better outcome if we gave surety to funding. And the top up I'm ambivalent about.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that whole of city plus a top up for anything above a particular SLA, and we're still notionally coming out ahead. Councillor Tozer, then Councillor Castro.
In regards to that, that whatever surface level agreement we might have, I'm very aware that in Mudgeeraba, we have what I would describe as a smaller catchment. We already have a very active sporting recreational life in the sports precinct there, and our Tai Chi or our yoga might have anywhere from 3, some week we might have 3 people participating, and then another week you might have 25 or 30 people participating, and I see it because I walk past it on the way to my office now. And I wasn't so aware of it before being at the Firth Park Community Centre. And I'd hate to think that if it moved to a whole of city program, some of those I know I've also walked down at Burleigh Beach early in the morning and seen the yoga class or the Tai Chi class there and gone, well, there's like
200 people.
200 people doing it. I get it because I'm down there seeing it. I would hate to think that Mudgeeraba didn't have the program or the whole of city programming thought it wasn't. Yeah, just because the numbers are a bit less, because the 3 people who turned up to the Tai Chi class that I saw 3 days ago and the 25 people that turned up 3 days ago, it was very, very convenient for them. And those people who are turning up to our community centre, I would hate to think that they have to now drive to Burleigh in order to participate in a class. I would not like to think that. I know that those programs are supplemented with divisional funding, but I'd hate to think that they stopped just because I didn't.
I think, and it's subject to the words that we produce for a potential 5, but the idea would be that there would be no disadvantage test.
Yeah,
so that there would be whole of city funding that would take care of 80 to 90% of it, and to the extent that you may be disadvantaged because there's a shift to whole of city programming,
yes,
you could top it up for less than you're currently paying.
Yeah, and I actually am one of the smaller contributors. I pay $18,000, but also that's in the context of me allocating greater funding to organised sport, which is high. We have high participation rates in our area because of the sporting precinct that we have that other divisions may not have,
Through the chair, one of the fundamental aspects of this program is local accessibility. So there are people who cannot travel large distances. We have anecdotal evidence today that people are travelling quite large distances to attend particular spots which are able to service a lot of these different activities and are close to different activity centres in the city. But also, we have a lot of information that travelling those distances is very difficult for a lot of the clients of these. So that local aspect will absolutely be continued in any future program. We absolutely need to be able to provide localised activities for people who can't or don't want to travel, and providing these things locally also keeps more people off our roads.
Councillor Jones, did you have a view about whether a potential shift to a whole of city funding model should happen as part of our upcoming budget deliberations or after the review of the program?
I'd be happy to see it for the next budget cycle. So to me, it's all the same bucket. It's all ratepayers' funds, but how do we actually get a program that I think is successful and people enjoy, and how do we actually allow for it to be securely programmed over a series of years? And again, I've had an earlier conversation with the director about we've got these great facilities. Let's just make sure that we've got the programming of activities in them working well, and that's all of our community facilities. It's our sporting fields. It's all of those things. But this, to me, provides surety that that's the whole of city program. Get on and do it.
Councillor O'Neill?
Have you finished?
I was just going to say, and just in regards to Councillor Tozer's comments, to me it wasn't about changing the program in terms of how it's been delivered. It was about actually enhancing the program and giving it that guarantee that this is where you're going forward, and your KPI is match or better the previous year's results.
Councillor O'Neill?
I just want to add to that, through you, Chair, that I think that we have to be careful about the equity as well, spreading it across the divisions, because it may end up with whole of city things, sometimes because some of the facilities are centralised or some of the outer divisions miss out a little bit, and then we end up paying more out of our divisional funds for a top-up. So I just want to make sure that we word it properly as to what we want to see.
Well, let's produce a camel with part 5, right? Let's have a think. Councillor Jones, do you want to get us started? 2 humps. All right. That a report be prepared for consideration during, well, this is funny because we're no longer considering things line by line, so it's a bit different. So it's still a report, though. Okay, so that report, yeah, for consideration during upcoming budget deliberations, outlining a funding model to deliver the Active and Healthy program from whole of city funds without prejudicing the existing activation enjoyed by divisions, or individual divisions, yeah, individual, with an option for divisional contributions.
And I think it requires important because I'm not trying to suggest that we suddenly need to spend 1.3 or 1.4 million dollars. And like, I mean, and I know that every year the Active and Healthy team have come around and have provided suggestions in terms of how activation and what that looks like. So I would expect that that would still happen. And if there was minor embellishments that were required to the program, that can clearly still happen. But I suppose I wasn't imagining that we would require a whole of city funding for the program and then we would match, another 30 grand or 40 grand on top of that. I don't see that as being the outcome. It was about providing a balanced, stable approach, which would probably also assist in making sure that we got the procurement of all the suppliers a little bit more stabilised as well.
Yep. Councillors, how are we feeling? Good? Councillor O'Neill, does that address your concerns? Yep. Councillor Young.
And thanks, Chair. Also, with the holiday program, I think the increase in uptake in our in our active and healthy school program is, and there's schools in every single division, but my understanding is the numbers there are becoming bigger, so it's another place to actually look at the numbers that are coming through and the postcodes, because a lot of those are actually local families whose parents are working and things like that. So as into sharing it across all the divisions, I think is fairly important.
Tozer, do I have a seconder? Councillor O'Neill. Any further questions? Speakers against? I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Geez, you guys got out of it easy, hey? We did the presenting. Look, councillors, do have a proposed general business item. I know. I'm going to read it, and hopefully it should be self-evident why we should be supporting this, but I'll talk to why it's so important if needed. It reads that Parks undertake an investigation into the process of sports field lighting installation in the city involving all internal stakeholders, specifically investigating where city standards have been implemented at a level above the Australian standard and therefore potentially resulting in increased project time and cost. And then another part 2, that a report be brought back in 12 months. I can take you on a 3-year journey into the bowels of decision-making around sports field lighting, if you like. No, it doesn't. All sports, but in soccer, in this particular case. If I've got a seconder, happy to talk to it, councillors. All right, seconded by Councillor Lacastro, moved by myself. So, long story short, councillors, as we know, a growing population has put a lot of demand on the open space that we have. very expensive to acquire open space at a standard that can support reliably sports and recreation because of flooding, for example. The way we can make better use of the assets that we already have is through lighting, right? More hours of kids playing sport. And lighting also allows us to spread the demands of training, which can protect competition pitches, for example. Now, for the last while, I have been working with a particular club who has come to me from time to time to say, "Councillor, we would like to apply for this grant. Can council please give us a letter noting that they're happy and supportive for us to secure our fair share of state and federal funding?" Unfortunately, those clubs haven't been supported in their grant asks because our internal process requires that club to basically engineer the whole solution before we can accept the merit of their application to the state and feds. And even internally, when we look at delivering a lighting project, we're having to deal with all of these unnecessarily inflated costs because we're over-engineering our lighting solutions rather than allowing contractors awarded a DNC, so design and construction contract, to simply adhere to the Australian standards. And it is making it more and more difficult for us to provide more lighting in the fields that we already have. This last budget, you might recall, we had to top up the funding by $300,000. $300,000, not for extra lighting, but to deal with inflated costs. I've been working productively with the new director and our city officers for a long time on this issue, and I had a breakthrough meeting a couple of weeks ago where we got to the nub of what's causing all of these unnecessary price inflations. And hopefully, with the strength of this, supported by full council, the Parks team will have an opportunity to argue for some common sense internally, and we could be in a position where we're wiping months from these projects and hundreds of thousands of dollars per project. Could be a real win for the city, and it's an example of one city thinking. So that's my pitch. If you're for more lighting at lower cost and you don't want to answer the question, how many councillors does it take to screw in a light bulb, I urge your support, but happy to take some questions. Any speakers against? Yeah. All right, I'll put that to a vote. Councillors, all those in favour? All those against? That is carried. And just before closing this meeting, councillors, I just want to reflect on the fact that this last 12 months has been a massive year of transition, right? New CEO has brought new change to the organisation, and this directorate, if you look at who's sitting at the head table here, has been confronted with a lot of change, and that change is continuing to unfold. And despite all of the work that the new director is doing in that space, the directorate has not skipped a beat. You know, all of the managers and all of the city officers that I've engaged with are solely focused on delivering a more livable city, even while working on internal processes. And I just want to acknowledge the work of the new director, his management team and all city officers supporting that livability push while getting the value for money push locked down as well. Director, I'm not sure if you want to share a few words in your brief time in the chair as we close out the year, but I just on behalf of, I suppose, the committee would like to thank you and your team for all of the work that they've done over the last 12 months.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly, there's plenty of challenges ahead of us, as you know. We take pride in our performance and our ability to deliver for you, and that won't skip a beat. So that's always been my undertaking. Our function here is to serve you and the community, and we understand there are areas in our business that we need to lift our game, and that is certainly our intent. So we welcome the opportunity that's been presented to us to reflect on how we do our business, to change and make sure that we are doing the best job we possibly can to deliver the facilities, the services on time, in the right place, at the right cost. So it's a great challenge. It's a great city. We love to be working with you. So thank you for your kind comments.
Thanks, Director. Councillors, we've got some empty calories here, which is excellent. So thank you as well for that gesture. Sorry? No, but I'll be a regifter.
There is a caveat with these councillors that you do have to sign up for an active and healthy program to work off the calories.
Awesome. All right.
Free version. Yeah.
So good. All right, councillors, if there are no other questions, I'll close the meeting at 9:53, and thank you very much. Thanks, Lauren. All right, meeting closed. I was